All right, we're live.
Okay. Emory, how you doing?
I am doing well.
Let's talk about, right off the bat, Instagram live feed. Was that your first one?
Yeah, totally the first one. I'm welcome back into society, and Instagram Live is like a new thing, so I was like, might as well.
Yeah, I was, I won't tell you where I was at, but I was in our office, but I wasn't at my desk. And I get this I had just followed you on Instagram, and I get a notification on my phone that says, Buy Land has just started a live stream. So I turn it on, and then I text Ryan. I'm like, oh, Emory just started a live cast. It was cool because you could ask questions.
Yeah.
And I was starting to type, do you want to be on our podcast? And then before I could finish, you were done.
Oh. I'll be on there again.
And who were you on there with?
Well, which time? The first? I've only done two.
This was the one yesterday, right?
Okay, the other day. A buddy.
You were at like a brewery or a coffee
we were at
shop
the
or
coffee
something?
shop, yeah. So that was a buddy of mine, Dustin.
So the first one, did you do the what's in my backpack?
Yeah, well, the first one was I had just ordered a Kuyu sleeping bag to lighten my pack like a pound.
Significant.
Which is significant. And then I was like, I'm like looking at the, it was super awkward. I'm like, I don't even know how this thing works. My phone is cocked sideways. And I'm like, this is clearly a horrible idea right now. But I was like, who's watching? Just a handful of people. So, and then apparently it records it and then it keeps it for 24 hours. And I was like, great.
Yeah, so I tried to go back and find it, and I'm like, where was that thing? I really wanted to see what was in your pack. So
yeah, and then the second one, I was like, I'm just going to do a gear dump and go through my stuff. And
there was a ton of questions being asked. Did it show you how many people were on it?
Yeah, it shows you how many people, yeah. I realize there's probably like some sort of technique to it. Like you have to, probably during the workday is not the time to do one.
You got me.
Probably, yeah. But it was fun.
So Instagram's been a big part of your deal?
Yeah, I mean, I have my website and then I have Instagram, and Instagram's my main focus for like easy publishing of photos and stories while I'm on the trail.
And how many followers do you have? Do you know?
Just a couple thousand. I'm not
just a couple thousand.
Well, compared to some accounts, I mean, I dabble with it. I don't. To me, this is like my journey. When I started my website a couple of years ago, it was more or less my journey. And if someone wants to follow along, then wonderful. But if they don't, like this is about me. And actually, it sounds kind of weird, but having the website has actually motivated me to go out and do things and push myself a little bit further. And so it's actually really been about me and my experience. And if I can help other people, then awesome.
Because it's kind of a form of accountability in a way, right? Because
it's incredible.
People are wanting to see.
Yeah.
And I was looking at your spacing between your posts, and they're sometimes a week or longer.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Well, I think it's amazing that you have a couple thousand followers.
Yeah, it's been really great.
Because it's easy with our podcast to go, oh man, we only had 100 views, but imagine if this room was full of 100 people.
Totally.
When was the last time you spoke to 100 people at one time?
Yeah.
So having a couple thousand is awesome.
Totally.
So let's back up just a hair. Let's introduce him officially. What he's got going on, where he's going, what he's doing.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, my name's Emory, and I am currently hiking the Pacific Crest Trail from Mexico to Canada. Currently, I'm not like physically hiking it, but I'm home on a little break, waiting for the snow to melt, which is a whole topic this year in 2017. And so in about a week, I'll go back down to where I left off, and hopefully the snow's melted down a little bit more.
So that was like Crater Lake area?
Yeah, 2 days south of Crater Lake, 2 hiking days south of Crater Lake.
Okay. And so you made it from the border of Mexico. You started April
10th. April 10th. And then hiked 750 miles through the desert up to a town called Lone Pine, California. It's essentially it's one of the gateways to the Sierras. And snow there's a lot of elements to it, but we were just thinking, hey, let's go around. We can come back. We weren't willing to do the mountaineering thing when you have to cover so many miles, and then lots goes into it. But so we ended up chasing the trail. Got up to Tahoe, and when you hike 750 miles, you become attached to those miles. And so knowing that you're skipping some.
So how big of a section did you skip?
I haven't looked at it, but I'm guessing it's roughly like 300 to 400 miles.
So pretty big chunk.
Pretty big chunk, and to some people the PCT is, they think of the Sierra Range, and all these major peaks and passes, and I mean if you've ever been to the Sierras, it's incredibly beautiful. So skipping that, hiking from the desert, and you finish the desert section, and then you move on to the Sierra. That's the next one, and then you go to these different phases. To skip a phase or to skip a portion of the trail when you weren't intending on doing it, it's really hard to kind of swallow and kind of move on.
And to give people perspective, the trail's 2,600 miles long.
2,600, yep.
So that makes the 300 miles look a lot smaller, right?
Yeah.
Than if you just said I skipped 300 miles.
Right.
Are you going to go back and eventually do it?
So that's the intent. Yeah. I mean, my hope was to do the entire thing from start to finish in one shot. And then with the snow this year, the snowpack in the Sierra Range, and pretty much all over the West Coast, it just tossed another element to it. So it was like, okay, cool, let's go around and then come back to the Sierra Range. But then getting married in October, and I was going to be finishing up in September.
And who are you getting married to?
My fiancée, Jessica, who was patiently waiting for me to finish up this silly hike. So yeah, going back, we were thinking, okay, flip-flop, and there's a bunch of ways to do it. But I'm guessing by the time, I get to Canada, there's going to be minimal amount of time to go back and really hit it. So the good thing about the trail is it's always there. So
Yeah, it's not going anywhere.
it's not going anywhere.
Is the spot you skipped, is that where the John Muir Trail goes
Yeah.
through?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was looking forward to that section so much. And trail's all about timing. If you start too early, you're going to hit a bunch of snow. If you start too late,
It'll be too hot.
the desert's going to be terrible, and then you might also, if you start too late, by the time you get to the North Cascades in Washington, you butt up against snowfall if it comes early, and North Cascades is not anything to joke about. So you got to get it just right, and you have to put those miles on. So it's kind of one of those things.
Have you seen that Netflix documentary? I think it's called Mile and a Half.
I have, yeah.
So cool.
Yep.
So cool to watch their journey.
Was that the John Muir Trail one?
Yeah.
So that documentary actually got me super interested in who these freaks are that hike 2,600 miles.
What's it called?
It's called Mile and a Half.
So the premise behind that is if you ask somebody who's hiking like how much further, usually the answer is mile and a half.
Gotcha.
So this was like a collection of I want to say like 8 different type of artists, if you will.
Yep.
So there was like a photographer, a sound guy, a watercolor painter, a musician. There was like 8 people from all different walks of life. Some of them were completely not ready to hike a trail of that magnitude for a month.
And it's 200. The John Muir is like 210 miles.
Wow.
Which watching that and then it puts into perspective what you're doing is mind blowing.
Well, so that's the crazy part is I saw that documentary and it was I thought it was a beautiful documentary. Like
It was amazing.
those artists did a really good job. Like you said, the sound. There's a guy dedicated to sound, hiking, and they did to 210 because they had so much gear. They didn't cover really big miles, but
Like daily?
yeah, I think they only did like maybe 10 or so miles a day. So it took them quite a while to
I
do
think it
it.
was about a month or so.
Yeah, it took about a month.
Compared to you're going, 20, 25 miles a day?
Yeah. At this point,
Which is incredible.
yeah.
So let's back up. Ryan's geeking. He's been geeking for the last 2 days.
It's really interesting
He
to
has
talk
so many
about.
questions. He has so many questions. So I'm going to let him ask a lot of the detailed questions.
Cool.
But we've been doing this thing where I'm going to say what I think you are, and I met you about 10 minutes ago. So then you tell me where I'm right, and
All right.
then tell me what I'm missing.
Oh, this is good. I like this
Okay.
game.
So you're a vet.
I am a vet.
Thank you.
You're what's the official title for a hiker?
Through hiker?
Through hiker.
Through hiker. That's the long hikes. So through hiker. You're engaged.
I'm engaged.
That's about it, I think.
I have a normal job. I promise.
What's your normal job?
I'm like, well, that's a hard question. So, I'm a jack of all trades at my company. Essentially, I work in the drone industry, and whether it's flight testing, project management, or customer interface, or just being a subject matter expert. I can do any one of those things on any given day.
So we'll come back and talk about how your employer is supporting what you're doing.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit briefly about post-traumatic stress syndrome, if that's okay. We had our guest, we did a little 4th of July special on, and we had Ryan Caldwell on with Got Your Six Fishing, and he's a wounded combat vet that started a nonprofit where he takes veterans out on fishing trips to help them cope with their PTSD. Some of the statistics were flooring, and 22 suicides a day, 50% go undiagnosed. So what's been your experience with PTSD, and maybe how's that got you inspired to do this? Because you're doing it with Warrior Hike, correct? So
Yeah, so a few years ago, so I served in the Marine Corps, 2 tours in Iraq. Everyone has, what I've learned about PTSD is it doesn't really matter what your story is. It's, you either have it or you don't. And, you can, someone that doesn't have this crazy traumatic war experience can suffer from PTSD. There's, I
don't mean to cut you off, but it's not just veterans. I've heard war correspondents coming back and having cocaine addictions because they couldn't find anything that gave them the same amount of adrenaline.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a really big topic, and it's a really interesting one. I educated myself on it. Through a process, I ended up going to this place called the Vet Center. They provided free counseling, and close friends and family were like, hey, you should give it a shot, And every veteran's going to tell you they don't have a problem. And some don't, and some do. And there's varying degrees of it. Some people really suffer from it, and they don't know how to cope with it. So this Vet Center, that's essentially a pillar of the VA, but it's kind of like a one-way, from how I was explained it. It's like a one-way check valve, if you will. Like the information it doesn't go back to the VA. So unless you release the information to the VA. So the VA helps support the Vet Center, and they provide counseling to veterans.
So they can kind of do it without that becoming part of their medical record.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's a one-way information thing, and all the records are kept at the Vet Center. They don't go back to the VA unless you want them to. So I learned about, my first counseling session was, what did you tell me about? And it was a veteran. My counselor was a veteran of the Army, and she asked simple questions like, hey, tell me about your start. Just start talking. And, of course, like the normal veteran answer is like, well, I didn't really have that much of that's fine,
Pretty ho-hum.
And then at the end of it, she's like, oh, so that's really funny. You said that you didn't have had any experiences, but then let me just read these off to you. And I was like, all right, like fair.
And she was
touche.
reading off stuff that you had said in the previous.
Yeah, so she's repeating, her notes. And I was like, okay, touche. Like, that's fair enough, Okay, let's talk about it. And over the course of a couple of years, and it wasn't every week. It was like, there's such high volume that you're in there like maybe once in a couple of months, depending on your needs, right? But it was always really nice. Like, she basically walked me through how my brain is functioning, how it was functioning, and how I can retrain my brain to cope with, like, why do I feel like I need to look at doors? Why do I get amped up in these situations? And so they're like, dude, you're okay. Like, but this is how your experience affected you long term. So they help retrain you.
Kind of like reprogramming.
Totally, yeah, it's reprogramming.
Like almost like reprogramming your subconscious.
Yeah, and then they educate you on PTSD, and you're kind of like, okay, cool. Like, I have a number of friends that don't believe that they struggle with it, but you can clearly tell that there's something there. So that's my experience with PTSD and educating myself on it.
Before you talk, I think I know where you're going. When did you guys meet? When did you guys start dating?
October 7th, 2016.
Okay. So, so had you gone through this counseling?
Yep. Yeah.
So you didn't get to see the before and after effect, really. You just saw the after.
And I mean, I haven't really spoken to anyone that's like told me there was a drastic change. For me, it was more educational. Like, oh, okay, cool. These are the things I need to be aware of. This is how my brain was affected by these moments, and this is what I need to look out for. So it's essentially like an awareness training type thing. Like, and here's how you can combat it.
And that probably going through that probably prevents anything from stemming off into a bigger issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yep.
Because all you ever hear about really is Trace Atkins on TV talking about raising money for wounded warriors and PTSD, and you hear all these horror stories. But one of the statistics that Ryan Caldwell said, where half of PTSD goes undiagnosed. And it might not have any life-changing impacts, but it could affect your relationships. It could affect a lot of things, your job, your performance on the job.
A good book to read is called Tribe.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that book.
Yeah, he talked, Sebastian Junger, I think that's his name. He's a war correspondent and talks about the effects of war on troops and stuff like that.
I think that's where I heard where he had the cocaine addiction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, at least he suffered from it for a while from PTSD from his experiences.
Yeah,
he didn't know what they were.
He just said that the adrenaline over there is such a high that the only way to come back, the only way he could find to fill that is to go out and do cocaine and go to clubs and act crazy.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
I think that is a good way of describing it to somebody that hasn't had those experiences, right? So, so you got through counseling, and then what happened? So
how I ended up with the hike was I actually watched that documentary, and I was like, who are these weirdos that hike? Who would do this? Why? How are they doing it? And so anytime I find a topic that I'm into the outdoors, hunting, whatever, backpacking, anytime I hear a topic that is like, how is this happening? How are these people doing this? I deep dive and do some research, and then I was like, man, that's really, I'd love to do the John Muir Trail. That sounds wonderful. And the PCT is right in my backyard, essentially, right? Crosses the Bridge of the Gods, a half an hour. I cross it every day to and from work. And I was like, interesting. And then you get the hiker season come through, and you see these guys, and they look like, shells of human beings. And they're just like, you're like, I don't know if he's homeless or if he's a hiker, but there's certain tells, and then I was like, man, that would be a dream thing. Well, at the same time, all that was going on. I've been out of the Marine Corps for 10 years this fall, and I've still worked with the military in and around them, but I kind of took a hiatus from really being involved with veterans and just the military culture as much as I could because I was still kind of around it. And I realized I'm like, hey, I want to do something that kind of helps veterans somehow. I want to do some volunteer stuff. So I came across this nonprofit called Warrior Hike. At the time, it was called Warrior Hike, and they were putting combat veterans on these through hikes throughout the United States of America. And from start to finish, they would essentially sponsor them, and they would provide them counseling. And I was like, whoa, that's super cool. I wonder if I could help out. So I emailed the guy, the founder, Sean Gobin, and he's like, I was like, hey, let me know if I can help out. And he's like, well, send me your resume. So, I'm a normal guy. Here's my resume. And he was like, he was in need of a Pacific Crest Trail coordinator. So to coordinate the entire trail for these hikers going south to north, and essentially it was to call individual supporters and VFWs and American Legions and all these different entities along the way. And when these guys get into town, a VFW comes and picks them up, puts them up for the night, feeds them, essentially loves on them for the night, and then sends them on their way the next morning.
So you're coordinating all those stops.
Yeah, calling.
Are you doing food drops for these guys too, or is it always housing?
No, I wasn't doing the food drops. The organization was doing that, but my duties were to coordinate. There was 25, 26 stops along the way from south to north. And so just planning, here's when they're going to be here, here's when they're going to be there, what do you have set going on? So I did that for 2 years and, started learning more about through hiking. I'm like, this, when you have a full-time career and a normal job, through hiking it's a commitment. It's 4 to 6 months of hiking every day, and that doesn't work when you have a job.
Going to elk camp for 2 weeks is a big disruption to your life. Yep. Yeah.
So I'm like, this is never going to happen. This is going to be a pipe dream. I'm going to have to section hike it, or I'm going to have to just pretend I'm just going to have to, live vicariously through these people. Well, it was haunting me. And started talking. You know, the organization liked what I was doing, and I was a good volunteer. And they were like, "Hey, if you ever want to hike, you know, let us know. We'd love to have you on the program." And I'm like, how can I do this? And I was just at a point in life where I'm like, man, I'm 33 right now. I'm in the middle of a career, and I'm like, I got 2 good legs, a good back. Like,
it might be now or never.
it's now or never, you know. And I'm the guy that has the plan. Like, I'm a committed individual. Like, I'm like, yeah, I just have a job, and I'm gonna go to work every day. So doing something like this was out of the question. But then you start, all these little things started like coming into play, you know, like financially or relationally, or like, you know, just interesting little things that like I wasn't having to work for it. They were just falling into place. And I'm like, this is super weird. I'm not really having to, it's kind of, it's pointing me in that direction, yeah. Right? So I posed the question to my HR department, hey, what would you think about, you know, leave of absence? And they're like, yeah, sounds great. I'm like, well, here's what I'm going to do. And they're like, yeah, we want to support you in doing it. You can come back to your job. And I was like, whoa, like that's
really
crazy.
awesome.
Because they're a very outdoorsy company. And I was like, that's awesome. Let me know how I can help. So they've been incredibly supportive, which was awesome.
Did they make you take a drone with you and have a drone
no,
the whole time?
I wish. It'd be too heavy. But yeah, I mean, they're excited about it. I'm excited about it. I can, you know, the weight of being able to go back to a normal job, you know, a job, not have to figure it out. But I went into that. I told him, I was like, I'm willing to take the risk. Like, I was just at that point in life where I'm like, I'll figure it out. I have to do this thing. Like, it's now or never. And then everything worked out, and I stopped working on April 1st and set foot down off the trail and on the 10th, and been hiking ever since.
So why did you know, I try to come into these podcasts with one question. I'm saving it. But why did you decide to take to social media and write a blog? You said, we talked about that accountability and wanted it to drive you, but was it just to keep in touch with people that you worked with and your friends and family, or did you want to write a story and put it out there?
So the website, the Byland website, was kicked off after I went backpack hunting with a buddy of mine, and
where'd you go?
Mount St. Helens.
For elk?
Yeah, elk. Yeah.
What unit? This is dangerous talking about hunting on this show.
Don't do that. Don't do that. He wrote about it. There's great pictures.
Is it?
He tells all about it. So go to Byland, BYLAND.co, and you can read all of his stories. But
yeah.
Keep going.
We're walking off the mountain, and he's like, I didn't grow up in a hunting family. I didn't grow up in a backpacking family. My parents are from the Midwest. They let me be outdoors, but I didn't really have anyone like, you know, I didn't grow up in that like hunting family, you know, that's like shrouded with years of experience. And I just remember struggling. Like, I'm like, this is really freaking miserable. Like, I'm so cold all the time. I'm miserable. Cotton is apparently the wrong form of clothing to wear, and especially in the Pacific Northwest, right?
During
so I'm
elk
like,
season.
but these people keep going to the mountains every single year, time after time, and then there's these crazy people on, you know, doing things, and I'm like, I'm clearly doing something wrong. So I did my investigative work, you know, and I was like, screw it. I'm just going to do it right. I'm going to find out how they're doing it. And then I started investing into gear and changing some stuff up. And I was like, dude, this is way better. Like, this is amazing. Like, okay, the game has changed. And so my experience, I start introducing people to this thing, and I'm like, well, here, try this, try that. And then they start having a good time, and I'm like, I just want to share it with people. That's all I want to do. So the entire website is literally dedicated to just, here's my story, here's my journey, here's what I was doing wrong, here's what I'm doing right now, or, you know, here's what I've changed to do this. And because living out of a backpack or going, you know, it's a different experience when you carry a camp on your back. And I took Jessica up for the first time backpacking this weekend, and it was you grew up in a camping family, and it's different when camp is on your back.
Oh, very different.
I'm going to back you up a little bit, because I think that maybe there's a similarity there's definitely two different types of people that hunt and fish.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's a similarity with people that do these through hikes, where you have the people that's their time, that they don't like to bring a lot of people. What's so funny?
Oh, nothing. I'm having a great time. This is an awesome conversation.
So there you have the people that want to go up and they don't want to bring a lot of people. Jessica's still laughing.
It's her birthday.
And yeah, we sang happy birthday. We should have waited done it on the podcast.
Could have.
But let me get back to my point if I can make it here. So you have the two different people that go up and that hunting is their time, it's their experience. They don't like to share their spots, and then you have the people that want to bring other people with them. And almost sharing that with other people is part of the enjoyment of doing the hunting or fishing activity. I am the second, like you. Like I almost invite too many people.
Yeah.
And then you start to form a community of friends, and you can bring people into it. And we do a lot with kids and stuff, and get a lot of enjoyment out of that. I would assume it's the same on the trail, right?
Exactly,
you have both people, the people that don't want to communicate, don't want to. Which brings me to my question.
Yahtzee.
So, do you think your experience now hiking the trail is different than somebody that would have done it 20 or 30 years ago because of social media and the internet and being able to share that? Do you think that affects it in a positive way, which I'm sure it does? I think you've talked about that a little bit, but do you think it affects it in a negative way?
Oh, I'm sure it goes both ways. The trail, when it kicked off, and I don't even know what year it kicked off. I kind of feel bad not knowing that because I was thinking about that as I'm hiking the trail.
Ryan's going to look it up right now.
I remember hiking the trail, I mean, you have literally like all day to think about stuff, and you're like, I wonder how long this trail has been here. You know, you hear about it being rerouted, and then you hear about these guys that have hiked it, years and years and years ago when it first started, and the support that was on the trail. Like, I go into town, I can resupply in a grocery store or a gas station, that's on the trail. And those gas stations, they just so happen to carry Mountain House for some reason.
Mountain what?
Mountain House, like meals, Backpacker's Pantry, dehydrated or freeze-dried meals. And you're like, so it's clearly different. It's a different time. But those hikers back in the day, I'm sure that, I'm sure they had a much different experience. They were much more deep in the wilderness, or they're much more. I mean, I heard stories of those guys doing, like, they actually could hunt along the way for food, and they were doing foraging because it was a different generation, and a different kind of person that was willing to hike from Mexico to Canada with very little in the technology and all that stuff. So there's been a lot of positive influence from Instagram and social media. I mean, the book Wild, Cheryl Strayed, is a huge topic on the PCT in both lights. It's really funny. You get people from all across the board being like, oh, it was good or it was bad, and she's this and she's that, or she's a saint. She brought a lot to the amount of single females hiking solo on the Pacific Crest Trail is staggering.
Is that a good thing?
I think it's amazing because
not the female part, but the bringing more people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, but specifically, I think what she did for women to go out and do this,
empower them to go do it. Yeah,
hiking is terrifying when you have no. You ever been alone in the woods at night? Like, I don't care how old you are. That can really be creepy.
We've talked about it a lot.
Creepy.
It's not fun.
It's not fun, and the sun goes down and things change, or when you don't have that emotional, support of someone hiking with you. That changes things. Be solo, and it's gonna rock your world. Like, you got to warm up to that. And so, Cheryl Strayed, I've never met her, but I think she did a lot for awareness on the PCT. I mean, through hiking's like, people know about it now because of that book and the movie.
Sure. I'm one of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's how everyone's like, oh, that's that movie, and I'm like, yeah. I don't care how many miles she did or didn't do. Like, people know about it now. So social media, people know about these trails, and those trails need to be protected. They go through private forest land, and they go through, cattle, and they go through all this stuff. And, now that people know about them, and people are always looking for, it's like 2017, right? People are always looking for, the next extreme thing. People can't get satisfied enough. So, who knows what it is, but, people are getting drawn towards, extreme hiking. It's extreme hiking, So I think it was a different experience for these original guys back in the day. But I think, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. Positives and negatives across the board.
So I have a little bit of experience through reading through your posts, and the thing that strikes me the most is when you don't have service and you can't let Jessica know you're safe, and you speak to that, or when you can't share a picture with somebody.
Yep.
Because I experience that a lot when I'm either cycling or hunting, and I'm standing on top of a mountain or, way deep, out in the boonies on my bike, and I just see something amazing and I can't share it with my wife or anybody. And so it's a totally different experience when you're just like, man, this is too incredible just to be here alone. Although at the same time, it's very neat. It's, so when I read your stuff and, hear how it affects you when you can't make contact with her or somebody else, I think it speaks to that social media aspect and technology and whatnot.
And I mean, if I can, with the website, going back to the website and social media, and with a photo or some words on a page that someone might read, if there's one thing, like if one person sees a photo and they're like, dude, that's cool, I wonder what that's about, and they strike an interest in it, and they go on their little adventure, whether it's a 4-mile hike or they start backpacking, they're like, that's pretty cool, or they do a through hike, or they go hunting, or whatever it is. An image can do a lot for someone. I mean, that documentary did a lot for me.
Well, I think what you're writing, I just read a little bit. I just knew you were coming on a couple days ago, so I did a little bit of research, and the story you wrote on your last post about running to the guy and asking him why he was doing it.
Yep.
What I found really interesting is people's attention spans are short, but I think people's span for how long they can have a thought is short, right? And the fact that you thought about that all day and went back and forth on your opinion, maybe so people that aren't familiar, maybe talk a little bit about it, but I think that's got to change you a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah. You have nothing but time to think on the trail. That's the beauty. So to wrap up the warrior hike stuff real quick, and because this is all part of it, right?
Yeah.
The organization puts these vets on the trail to think. It's long, and it's like they have, some psychologists working with them. They're doing studies of, essentially it's wilderness therapy for veterans. Instead of medication, instead of struggling here, like they have, and it's not an end all say all, it's like you have 2,600 miles and you have 24 hours a day to think about yourself and your situation, and you get to meet strangers that are super kind, and you get to meet people that are not like you, but you're doing the same thing they are. And so it kind of changes your brain a little bit, re-engages like your faith in humanity a little bit. And then you find eventually you run out of thoughts and you're just white noise. And a lot of those guys don't have white noise, And so to just like kind of get to rock bottom a little bit mentally and physically, and then come back out of that and kind of sort through some things. It's not like you're not going to be cured, but you have all the time to think. And that's the beauty of the trail. That's one of the awesome things about the trails. There's no technology, and you really can't text and hike at the same time if you're going to do 20 miles, And so you're left with the sound of your trekking poles and
your boots,
and your brain.
Well, it's kind of like it's hard to recreate a walkabout, right? Because that's what in a lot of different cultures they have some version of when you reach a certain age, you go out in the wilderness for however long by yourself, and you come back a man, and that's something our culture really doesn't exist anymore. So,
yeah, it's interesting. You spend a lot of time with yourself and sort through those, like my thoughts on why this dude was out there. I mean, I came full circle on that.
So he one of the common questions when you're running into people on the trail is, so why are you doing this?
Yeah, at first, yeah. I mean, he was one of the first guys he's an awesome dude. I don't know where he's at on the trail, but very just free spirit type guy, super awesome. Never saw him hiking, always saw him hanging out, but he was always doing the same miles, if not more than me. He was just always chilling, and he came to a water point, and we started talking, and I was like, well, why are you out here, man? And he's like, I don't know, life just seems more real out here. And I disagreed with him 100%. I was like, bro, this is not real. This is a dream state. This is not normal. Like, this trail is a vacation. Real life is back home with people and problems and careers and decisions to be made, you know. The only thing you really have to worry about on the trail is like water and food. Where's the next water at?
Yeah.
And how long do I need to plan for food? That's really like your only worry, as long as you have things on your back, you know, that you need. So I was like, no, dude, like, you're wrong. Like, this is completely backwards. And then I remember talking about it with the guys I'm hiking with, and I'm like, he's so wrong. You know, I'm like, I can't believe he would say that. And then you meet these people that are triple crowners, which means they do all 3 major trails in a lifetime, or triple crowners.
Which are the Pacific Crest Trail,
It's
the
Continental
Appalachian.
and the Appalachian Trail and the Continental Divide. That's a lot of hiking.
That's a ton of hiking.
And these guys, and then you have like triple crowners, or like, I mean, that's crazy. Like, they've done it 3 times. Every time I do a hill, I'm like, it's in the past.
It's the last time I do that one.
Yeah, I'm like, that rock sucked. You know, I'm like, that was the worst. Like, that really took it out of me. But at least it's behind me. And these guys are like, I'm going to do it again. I'm like, you know? But, you know, so these guys, so this gentleman, he's identified what's real for him is on the trail. Who am I to tell him what real is? Like, and that's really awesome that my opinion has changed. Like, my reality doesn't have to be your reality. Like, you have a different job than I do. That's your reality. Mm-hmm. It's no different than, you know, if this guy Big Spoon, that's what they call him. That's what he calls himself. Trail names.
Pooperazzi.
Pooperazzi, right? Yeah. It always puts a smile on people's faces. It's so good. If that's his reality, he found real. Awesome. And some people go out there and find it, you know? And maybe he does more trails. I'm not here to judge him or to, you know, I think it's a beautiful thing, you know, like, if you can find your reality.
Well, and it's a shame that somebody has to go to those extents to get out of the trap they're in.
Yeah.
I mean, get out of the 9 to 5, wake up. I mean, we all get sucked into it, all of us, especially in our industry.
And our first guest was Emerson, and he quit his job. He sold his house, sold all of his stuff, bought an RV, and as of 2 months ago, month and a half, he's just cruising the U.S. solo.
Yeah, he left in early May, and he just decided to hit the road and see how long he can make it. And his goal's 10 years.
Yeah.
And he did not take a lot of money with him. And so he's going to have to make money on the road. And I think he's getting ready to cross into Canada now, but he's going to make a trip back for our fantasy football draft in August. It's a live draft.
Priorities.
It's mandatory. So he routed it out where he's going to come back for the draft. But you don't have to go to those extremes. For me, Mount St. Helens, Lake Merrill, familiar? I can go up there at 6 o'clock at night, be out of cell phone service, and kind of get back a little quiet time, a little thinking time, and then plug back in to kind of get out of that routine. Because if you're not careful, you'll wake up 6 months later and realize that everything's gone by so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and that's where I was at. I'm like, dude, this life is like passing me by. I have these things that I want to try, and if I don't watch it, I'm gonna wake up and I'll be like 70, and I'll be like, man, remember that time that I had good knees?
Yeah.
well, you know,
I think they're good. Might not be good anymore, but like,
I have a mentor, a really close friend of mine. His name is Terry, and he's going through some health issues now. But about 5 or 6 years ago, I went out to his house to visit, and we were fishing in his little pond. And he was asking me tons of questions about my business. You know, how are things going? What are you doing? What are your goals? And I'm just telling him everything. Here's what I'm doing. I'm so happy about this. I have this opportunity. I'm going 1,000,000 miles an hour. And he said, well, just a thought. You can work your ass off when you're younger and make as much money as you can, and then you can retire and do all the things you want to do, hunt and fish and travel. When your knees are shot, when your body's old, or you can do a lot of that stuff when you're younger, when your knees are good, you're healthy, you have the physical capabilities of doing these things, and then retire a little bit later and work when your knees are shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't take them literally, because obviously we have to work and make headway in life, but it really woke me up a little bit
Mm-hmm.
to go, you know, work isn't everything, and we are healthy, and tomorrow's not guaranteed. And so that's when I started hunting and fishing. The scales tipped a little too far at one point. I was hunting and fishing too much, but I feel sorry for the people that don't have those type of outlets. It doesn't have to be the outdoors. It doesn't have to be fishing. It could be working out. It could be whatever you're into.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of brings me around a little bit to the whole point of this podcast, and we've spoken about it a little bit, but we called it the Hunt for Success because Cody and I like to hunt, fish, we like the outdoors, we're driven at work, but success doesn't mean money.
Mm-hmm.
Success can mean, you know, being a good dad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for you, like you said, I had a career. I can't just quit. And then you figured a way around it.
Mm-hmm.
And so just that in and of itself was a success.
Totally.
You know, being able to accomplish the trail when you do,
Mm-hmm.
that'll be a success. But everybody's definition of it's going to be far different.
Well, and I think one thing you can put a feather in your cap for, as far as judging their success with what you're doing, is the influence you're having on people.
Mm-hmm.
Like just today, Ryan goes, just make sure to read some of his blog. Read some of his blog so you know what you're talking about when you talk to him tonight. I'm like, okay, I'll read it. So I read a little bit of the blog, and just that one part where you talked to Big Spoon,
Mm-hmm.
and he gave you his opinion about why he's doing it, and you totally disagreed, and you were able to come back. It made me look at my thought patterns for that day. You know, like we met with several people today and doing several things. So just having that influence on somebody that is reading your podcast, that may not be a hiker or whatever, or not podcast, but reading your blog, just those little things, you can have a big impact in people's day or people's life. And that's not even taking into account the vets and everybody you're helping.
So one of the questions I had is, it doesn't speak directly to like how many guys you're hiking with actively at a time. How many when you started out?
Good question. So the way the program functions now is we started out with 6 guys,
Okay.
6 hikers, 6 veteran hikers sponsored by Warrior Expeditions.
As a team.
As individuals, that's the thing. So we can hike together. We can not hike together. We can hike solo. We can hike 6 people or whatever. So one guy dropped out after a week and a half.
Was that the dehydration case?
No,
that was a different guy.
That was like
Just a random guy.
Hiker,
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have to rescue somebody?
Yeah. He was a doctor, apparently.
And he got
Internal
dehydrated?
medicine. Yeah, he made a bad decision and he hiked out in the middle of the heat, and it was like a 90-something degree day in the desert, and wasn't feeding himself, wasn't pushing fluids, and then his body was like, when we found him, he wasn't going to get back to the trailhead. And so one of my good buddies on the trail that I'm hiking with, he's a Navy corpsman, so a medic. And so I was like, dude, he was like, he's done. So we pushed fluids, and like his whole body was cramping up, and we got him, we called the ambulance, and, got him there. We were only like a couple miles in, and there were some roads going around, so we got him out of there. But you run into some random things out there, and he just made bad decisions with his body. And at this point, we're conditioned for the 90-degree heat, and we're hanging out in McDonald's until it's like 5. Having to make McDonald's, and it was stunk. Like there was like probably 20 hikers in there, just eating calories.
Just let it cool down.
It smelled terrible. So
Was that the night you got the name Pooperazzi because everyone had McDonald's?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, it was around that time. No. So we started out with 6 guys, and then one guy dropped off. Another guy dropped off a few weeks ago, and then one guy, when we got to the Sierras, he looked at us. He's like, "It means more to me than just hiking." he needed to do it. So he bought some like gnarly crampons and like really, and he's like tank, man. I mean, he's like an infantry guy, and like, I mean, the guy is just like, I hate him because he just makes it look so easy. He's just same pace, and you see him across the canyon, and I'm like, he's like right on you, and you're like, this freaking guy right here. So if anyone's gonna do it, he's gonna do it. So he decided he needed to take a stand and like for himself and go through. And that's the thing, like, you gotta hike your own hike. Like, do what's best for you. And what was best for me is I thought about like, I could go through Sierras. Like, I'm fairly I'm a confident and like athletic guy. I'm pretty sure I could do it. I make good decisions. But I was like, I don't know, it's just not what I want right now. Like, I'd rather just, and I think I have a pretty good thing I'm coming home to. And so she probably wants me to come home, and I really like my life back here, and that's not what I signed up for. And, it's not that I couldn't do it, but I just didn't want to. I didn't desire. So if your brain's not in it,
And this was because there's like 15 feet of snow on the trail.
Yeah, I mean, the Sierras were nuts. And if it's not the snow, then it's the runoff. And then, it's been super dangerous, and people are making it, but I mean, they're certainly risking it. And, we're lucky we live around here, and you know what could happen out there. And a lot of guys, a lot of people don't. And so they're like, what's the worst that could happen?
Because they're not around that type of snow.
No, and I've met people that they're like, yeah, I went through the first 2 passes, and they're like, they're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I want to live to die another day, So we made our decision to go around, and then another guy, he's on his own. So I'm hiking with one guy, and he's going to meet back up with me next week, and we're going to do our best to get to Canada together.
So that brings me to your beard.
Yeah, it's still going.
So when you started, it was
fairly trimmed.
Fairly trimmed for a beard. And I'm assuming that, did you have a mental goal that this is going to grow until I get to Canada?
I think every thru hiker does that.
Okay.
If they can grow the beard.
Yeah. It's a solid beard, by the way.
Yeah, and it feels good, and I can't believe she puts up with it.
I can't wait to see what it's like at the end.
Are you going to shave it at the end?
I'm going to have to. I mean, this thing's like, I get bed beard,
It's
like,
going to get stuck in one of the drones.
It's crazy. I mean,
It has a mind of its own at
it
times.
does, and it like does these weird things. But like, man, I feel like super awesome when I'm like all dirty and stuff, and I come into town, and I'm like, yeah, I got that hiker look. You're like, I'm a badass, like way cooler than what I am.
See, what's funny is like when I get done with hunting season, I'm like, I just look in the mirror and I'm like, I am not presentable to, to clients or to anybody.
Yeah, no, right? I'm not presentable half the time. It's ridiculous.
Ryan and I have a beard off in the fall.
Yeah.
And we don't even come close.
Well, dude, I mean, this is like, I kind of had a head start too. I mean, I wasn't going to start the PC. I always wear a beard anyhow, so I'm not going to start it.
But not very long. You've made good time.
I don't like looking at my own.
Do guys bring shaving kits?
No, dude. No.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about like, because you speak to like weight, and you weren't totally comfortable with your backpack, and you wish you could have one of your packs from home.
Yep.
So talk a little bit about that.
So
where do you start?
Yeah, dude. I really enjoy the science behind gear. You might call me a gear nerd or gear Nazi or whatever you want to call, but like, I just love the research. Like, I love what like these different companies are doing with gear and like what works and what doesn't work. And okay, well, why does that backpack not work? And why are you uncomfortable and I'm not? So I'm really enjoying the testing phase of like thru hiking. My backpacking experience comes from like, going out essentially overnight, maybe 1 or 2 nights. That is completely different. You can live with anything for a couple nights. You can live with that for a week, But when you do it every week,
20 miles a day,
when that pound is in your bag or like what another liter of water feels like, or like you start getting really picky about stuff. And I thought that was just foolish, these ultralight guys, that don't have anything. And I'm like, you guys are crazy. Well, and some of them are nuts.
Yeah. I mean, I've just been looking at tents. I finally picked up a new backpacking tent that is by no means a very light tent. Mm-mm. And I mean, you're saving ounces and paying hundreds of dollars, to save ounces. Yep. And somebody's going,
what?
Well, why would I need a 1.5 pound tent over a 2 pound tent? Is that worth a couple $100 extra? And the answer is probably yes to you.
I think it's always worth it.
Now,
Now,
and that person that's giving them a hard time probably spends $30 a month on their HBO to be more comfortable in their house.
yeah, I mean, it's all perspective, right? And those 3 ounces added up over time, or half a pound, like half a pound added up. Like, you want to do a gear dump? Let's do a gear dump and start weighing this stuff out, and so you pack your fears.
What's a gear? It's just where you dump out gear.
Yeah,
and
you
compare.
you just dump it all out, and you're like, start chucking stuff. If it doesn't have multiple uses, or you haven't used it in the last couple of days,
it's done.
And there's some things in my bag that I'm like, I'm not getting rid of that. I sent my pants home.
He sent his pants home. I opened this
I'm a
box,
pants guy.
and there's pants in there.
Yeah.
Is that your only pair?
Yeah.
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 That's awesome.
I don't have pants. I wear small running shorts, and if I need my legs warm, I toss on some Nike
walk
running
faster.
tights. Yeah, you walk faster. I mean, it's crazy because I'm a pants guy. I mean, like, I wear pants when I'm hiking, and I walked the entire desert in pants, and I'm like, this sucks. Like, I'm kind of hot, and I'm, you think about shorts, and then it's funny the phases you go through. Well, you pack your fears. Well, I need this, I need that, I need,
Just in case.
just in case. My med kit was this, and then we got to, I got pretty good at like filtering some stuff out, but there's still some lingering things. And the guy that I'm hiking with, man, he's got a lot of fears because he had a lot of things in his bag. I mean, you can tell a lot of somebody when you see their bag. The Appalachian Trail, and he was a Marine, and I'm like, you've got, and Salty, his name was Salty, he had this tiny little bag. We walked out of camp one time. Now, he's willing to give up some things, but we walked out of camp, and he had 3 days of food, and his bag was 20 pounds.
So in relation, how much is your bag?
My bag was probably 35.
It's a lot of extra weight to carry all day long.
Yeah, and he's like 20 pounds, and he's like, and then there's just a fly down the trail, and you're like, man. So there's all these things that go into it. So gear-wise, I mean, yeah, you got to pinch the pennies, man. You got to, every ounce counts, and I didn't believe that until the pads of my feet wear down, and I can feel that pound after 15 miles. And at the end of the day, I'm like, holy crap, that bottle of water that I don't need to carry 3 liters. I can carry 2, or I can get by with 1, or I know how far a liter of water goes with my body, or food, you really start feeling the weight, and alleviating a pound is significant.
Do you have a snake bite kit in your
I don't,
pack?
and I don't even know what I would do with one. I stepped right over a snake.
So I told Cody that story.
Jumped out of my skin.
I've got one in my glove box.
Do you?
Yeah.
I don't even know what I would do. Actually, after that happened, the whole entire time, I was like, there's snakes on this trail, and we see them all the time, But when you step over one,
not knowing that,
and you thought it was a stick,
was a rattlesnake?
Yeah, right over them, because they stun them. The funny thing about a trail is that it's open and dry, and they can stun themselves. They go right across them.
Yeah, they're just sudden. He didn't give you a warning?
No, I think we scared each other, because I looked back for a second, like momentarily, like boom, to see if someone was behind me, and I stepped over something, and I remember mentally like making an effort to go over this object. Your brain just kind of like, after a while, your subconscious takes over, and you're just like maneuvering, right? I looked back, and it was a snake, and I was like, I just was shuddering. I was literally like leaping down the trail, and then I told that.
Was it still there, or that it was still
No, it
away?
just hung out there, and I'm like, get out of here, And when you see a snake, you kind of just try and get it off the trail.
Yeah.
But he didn't rattle or anything, and
Unless you don't like your buddy that's behind you.
yeah, right. Well, so I tell this buddy of mine, I'm like, dude, I almost stepped on a snake, and everyone's like, cool story, bro. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm in full freak out mode, and then weeks later, he steps over. He almost steps on a green rattlesnake, which is apparently even worse. And he just started running. He was like, I'm done with this trail. It's over with. And he fell in a pile of rocks. And I was like,
And then all you see all day is snakes.
yeah, sticks looks like snakes. I mean, it's like, I slept with a scorpion one night. I mean, but you just laugh it off. I mean, it's all part of the trail, and you just try not to think about it anymore.
So other than rattlesnakes, what are some of the other animals that you've encountered?
Bears, random couple bears.
Black bears.
Yeah, I sent her. So I make these videos for Jessica when I can't talk to her, like just and they're kind of fun to
getting
make.
your thoughts out.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
hey,
somebody
good
gets in the
morning,
service. Yeah.
And it's usually I need to do them when I'm
nice.
not walking because they're probably like
No,
up my
they're
nose or something. But I was like walking early in the morning, and I was like, a bear, click, and I turned it off.
He's filming himself and he goes, "Oh, hey, I gotta go. There's a bear," and then the video ends.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and this is, I don't know when it happened.
And I'll just send it to her. When I get service, I'll send it and I'll turn my phone back off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's like, did he
So,
die?
I'm sitting at
To
work
be continued.
listening to this video, and I'm like, guys, there was a
my
bear.
gosh, yeah.
There's not enough. I don't know what happened. Did it come in the right order? Like,
Yeah.
what is happening?
So yeah, a
Did
couple
you
bears.
go? Did you go? Sorry. Did you go? Hey bear.
I did. Well, that one was across the canyon. That is fine.
Because you watch. Well, you don't watch the show because you're on the trail, but alone.
Yeah. Well, so I bump into a bear near Shasta. I sit down. Had I not taken a break, we would have been nose to nose. But it was a little black bear. He's like medium size, a couple 100 pounds probably. Not huge, but I sit down on the trail to give my feet a break, and I look to I hear it, stick crack, and hunters, I'm like, okay, that's a not normal sound. And then you hear it twice, and you're like, yeah, clearly there's something walking over there. I look over, and there's just a bear going down the hill. And I was like, oh, cool. He's probably 50 or 60 yards away. He's just minding his business going down the hill. And I was like, hey, bear. I don't even, I watched the show. I'm guessing I got it from there. I was like, hey, bear. And he's like, he looks over, and he doesn't
He's
see
like,
me because
hey.
I'm sitting down.
He's all, hey, Emery.
How's the hike going?
And he's like,
Hey, human.
yeah. And finally, I'm like, I'm going to get a better look, So I stand up and I walk over there. I was like, hey, bear. And he's like, ah! He runs down the hill. And I'm like, oh, that was stupid. I should have just enjoyed it for a second.
Well, we watched that show, my wife and I do, and they go, oh, hey, bear, hey, bear. And I'm like, I would not be saying hey, bear.
Yeah.
My language would be a little different. And then we saw an episode where, because everyone's like, oh, hey, bear, hey, bear. And then this guy's building a fire, and he hears something, and he sees a bear, and he grabs his knife, and he turns around and goes, let's get it on! Really loud. Let's do this. He was just scared. That's my reaction. I
Yeah.
would be like, oh, hey, bear. Be like,
But it's funny. The more you get accustomed, to these things that happen to you, the human brain is amazing. I mean, it really adapts to the things that you were afraid of before, and you're no longer afraid of, and you're like, oh, that's just kind of part of it. I mean, clearly we all know that a bear could do some damage, but I mean, for the most part, they don't wanna
black
be-
bears are pretty docile.
Yeah, they don't want to mess around.
Unless they have cubs.
Yeah,
you're-
and we bumped into a cub at one point, and we looked for mom, and we got the heck out of there, and then we saw her later. But I mean, yeah, you're just perspective. Everything kind of changes. I think maybe you kind of become dumb to it in a sense, almost too comfortable. Because when
you're thinking you're part of nature at that point.
totally, and when ants are, you're like, well, it's that color ant. It's not a fire ant, so sure you can crawl on me. It's super weird. You just
What about fear of other people? Do you ever get that fear where that
Only
guy
when I'm
didn't
in
seem
town.
quite
Which is hilarious. Which is hilarious.
only when you're in town.
on a little stop?
Yeah, the closer to town you are, the
Little sketchier it
the little
gets.
sketchier it is. Out in the trees, there was only one guy that I was like, oh man, but he ended up being really awesome. He was just kind of this hillbilly from North Carolina, and I was like, I had no other. I was gonna camp there, and I'm like, oh man, he popped out of the bushes, and I was like, this isn't gonna be good. I'm like, I might have to.
Did he have a banjo?
No, he
Is it
should
on
have.
the teeth?
Yeah, he had no teeth, and it was just awesome guy though, super cool dude. But yeah, I mean humans, no one carries firearms out there. No one, I have a pocket knife. The biggest blade I have is that big.
That's crazy.
I know,
that
and
seems
that's super
totally
weird,
crazy.
right? And people ask about that because I'm always usually carry something or have some sort of defense mechanism, and for some reason no one does that out there. Ounce counters, and you really don't need it.
I never thought about that.
Oh, gun weighs so much. Yeah.
Ruger
Large
has
knife.
those new polymer pistols. Those are pretty light.
They still weigh a lot. I mean, ammo weighs,
Yeah.
and blades weigh. And I have a little Gerber, tiny little dime type, multi-tool thing, and this Gerber knife that I don't even use. I should just chuck it.
Just give it to Jessica.
Yeah. right?
These boxes show up, and I'm like,
The
I
pants,
wonder
I
what he
figured
doesn't
that was
eat
probably
now.
gonna be
And, you know, I
the
start going
biggest
through
one.
them.
So you're just
Pants
shipping
and
stuff
shopping.
home.
Just trying. Yeah, and it's funny before I came home, I'm talking to my buddy. He's walking in front of me because he had this big gear dump, right? Like, Salty was just chucking stuff, and Fears were just leaving the door, right? And he sent Jose's pants home, and he's like, "You don't need these. You can wear shorts, and you can wear these long johns or whatever if you get cold. Move around, you know, whatever." And his pack went from this obscene just monster to like, I was like, oh, that pack, you know, mentally the shift changes. They're like, the pack's so small. I mean, it still might weigh a little bit, but like mentally it changes. So you need every edge you can get, whether it's a pound or 2 or 10, or, you know, even the visual stimulation of a lighter pack. It really changes your entire outlook on the day. Oh, dude, I can do 25 miles in that pack. Otherwise, you got the big pack, and you're like,
Let's
You're
cut it
defeated.
at 18.
right? Yeah.
So what do you think of the museum?
I think it's incredible. I'm still taking it all in.
Jessica, thoughts?
There's a lot of eyes on us.
There are a lot of
They're
ice.
just glass, right?
Yeah.
Katie from our first cat podcast said there's a lot of balls in here,
There
which
is,
was
yeah,
kind of
there's quite a
funny.
bit.
Also, God.
So, how challenging has this been for you, Jessica?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's where we were going. Yeah.
You know, it's been interesting. We were pretty spoiled by the first month or so. The first month,
Yeah.
there was so much cell coverage because going into it, I wasn't sure what to expect. I was anticipating, my brother was in the military, and so I was anticipating it being like a deployment. You know, you hear from him when you hear from him, and there's not a ton of contact. And the first month was pretty good. We were able to talk most days. You know, the worst was every other day, and you know, it was pretty convenient. And then it was more sporadic, and you know, then it kind of got to the point where, you know, he was, you know, out of service for days at a time. And on my end of things, it's you know, it's if his phone's off or if he doesn't have service, I can't contact him. And so, you know, I have a very active imagination of, you know, where could he be and what could be happening, and, you know, all of these, you know, I hear these stories, and, you know, he's talking about snakes and he's fairly comfortable with them, or, you know, at this point seeing them pretty commonly, or seeing bears pretty commonly, where I'm, you know, sitting at my desk and, you know, drinking my coffee from Thatcher's, and I'm like, excuse me, what? You know, and it's really different on my end of things because I'm in a completely different world right now. And so it can, you know, it can be hard because I worry, and I'm kind of a worrywart already, you know, and so I think of what could be happening and a lot of the different scenarios, and, you know, so you add that onto the distance of, you know, not being able to see each other, not being able to have any sort of, I don't know when he's going to have service. I don't know when he's going to call. I don't know if, you know, I'm going to be meeting with a client, or if I'm going to be, you know,
Yeah.
dealing
What
with
if
an
you have
underwriter
to
or
miss
something.
let it go to voicemail?
Oh, exactly. I miss a phone call and I feel awful. I you know, it's really hard. So I'm, you know, constantly, you know, making sure my phone's on and it's plugged in, and yeah.
And by no means does she, like, she's been an incredible blessing, because like there is a ton of opportunity to have a guilt trip about going and doing this thing and being gone. And from day one, when I told her, I was like, hey, so I'm doing this thing. And she was like, cool, sounds like a great idea. Sounds pretty hard, but I'll be here when you get back. And I was like,
Just don't let
Yeah,
her eat the wedding cake.
You know,
Small changes.
it came up. So we hadn't been together very long when it started becoming a real, you know, option. And, you know, he brought it up and he's like, so there's this thing, and, you know, I might have an opportunity to do it, and it's this hike. And I'm like, oh, cool, I like hiking. And he's like, no, you know, oh, honey, these 6 months. And I'm like, oh, you know, damn.
That's a hike.
yeah.
But, you know, it's been interesting, and it's been fun, and I've gone down to visit. And,
Yeah,
you know,
that's been huge.
yeah, you go down for a few days and see him wherever he's out on the trail. I go pick him up and drop him
Drop
off
me
on
off
the
at a random
Yeah,
spot.
off
so
on the side of the
talk,
road.
talk about, well, I want both of you
I
to
heard
answer.
you guys talking about the Donner party. Is that what you're
Well, no,
Yeah.
but the day that you dropped him off on the side of the road, you took a picture on Instagram and said
I
kind of
did.
weird dropping your fiance off on the side of a dirt road.
Yes.
And then Emory, talk about you know, so you both have two different, very
Totally,
different
yeah.
aspects. You're gone walking, and she's sitting there
Yeah.
watching you walk away. So,
It's super messed up.
so yeah, what were you feeling, Jessica?
Yeah.
And then Emory, what were you thinking as you're?
The first time I went to see him was Big Bear, and I flew in to Ontario, and I rented a car, and I drove like an hour and a half, and he had gotten in the day before me, so
She's never seen you
I've
in full
never
hiker
got to
status.
see him super smelly yet.
Yeah.
That's
You
probably
know,
a good
like
thing.
he's always in there the day before me, so so you know we have our weekend, and the
We
you know
do
the
a trial
last day we do it. Yep. We're trying to figure
Do a
out.
trial run of what?
Well, I needed to make sure I could get to the trail from where I thought I could.
Yeah.
So
we're
it was
like,
super. It was like
let's
super
go.
messed up.
Let's go just drive down this road where we think, you know, I should probably drop him off and kind of see how it's going to go. And, you know, he's got his map and he's figuring things out. And I don't even know how good you are with directions. I couldn't find my way out of a paper bag. And he's looking at this. He's like, oh, the trail's going to pick up, you know, right over here. And we're driving down this pothole ridden dirt road in this rental car. And we drive for probably 40 minutes
Yeah.
maybe. And he's like, okay, stop right here. You know, I think the trail picks up about, you know, quarter to half mile over this ridge, so this will be a good spot. And it just kind of hit me like, I'm gonna have to leave you on the side of the road, and then I'm gonna have to turn around and drive away, and then get on a plane and fly home.
And then not know when you're gonna have cell reception.
Exactly. And so, you know, the next day, that's what we did. We, you know, drove out and
It was not
stopped
easy.
on this road. Well, the worst part was we were kind of eager, so we left a little early, and then I think we had a little too much time because, you know, then you don't want to leave, and then, you know, pretty soon I'm like, okay, well, you know, gotta go because I have to catch a flight. I have to still drive, you know, 40 minutes back down this this crazy road and get to the airport.
And I think at that point, like we'd already experienced what the trail is like in relationship sense, so we know kind of. I think it was part of it was like, oh, we know what this looks like. This is what we're going into. Like, I don't know when I'm gonna see. I really don't know when I'm gonna see her again because timing with weekends and like where I'm gonna be at and snow and all this different stuff. I'm like, dude, I really don't know when I'm gonna see her again. I don't know when I'm gonna talk to her again, and I got to worry about her getting back to the airport and all that stuff. And then
Yeah, she's got to drive down the road. You're like, is she gonna get a flat tire
Yep.
and not be
And
able
I'm
to
like,
change it,
what
or
the heck, man? I'm like, and then I'm just supposed to like put my bag on and walk down a dirt road, and I was gonna be meeting up with the guys in like a day and a half, so I'm hiking solo for the first time, and I'm like, this is super intense, you know, like it was really heavy, and I was like, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
And then we had to do it again.
Yeah,
in
so
Tahoe.
the first time he, you know, just walks down this dirt road and gets smaller and smaller, and pretty soon he's, you know, around this bend, and
She actually left. Like, I get to the
so
bottom of the thing, and I'm like, I could see the trail, and I'm like, she freaking left. I was like, well, she did have to go somewhere, but I'm like,
well, she was
you
supposed
never
to.
know. There's a chance that maybe she was willing to pay the extra fee. to
What
like,
if you decided not to do the trail at that point?
Right.
And
or
like,
you know, I was just gonna like follow behind him. He's
Yeah.
gonna turn around. I'm gonna be like following.
Creeping,
I'm like, I'm just
yeah.
coming with you. Don't mind me.
So how bad? I mean, is there a part of you in a selfish way that doesn't want him to go back now that he's home?
Yes and no. I've really loved. I think the timing of him coming home now, which was super unexpected. I think it's been really good because we're over halfway.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and initially when he was counting the miles, I was counting the miles too, and I was like, cool, I'm counting down. And he's, you know, almost halfway, and he's getting closer. And you know, you're 20% done with the trail, and you're 22% done with the trail, and you know, I was constantly looking at it on my end. But yes and no.
she's in it with me.
Yeah.
Like I look at her as like, I called her one time. I had a really bad day. It was really physically challenging, and like there was snow involved, and I had like a mile to go to camp. I had service, and I was all alone. It was like every man for himself type thing. Like it was like just get there, you know. And I called her and I was like, I need you to keep me company. Like I need your voice right now. Like just talk to me because I'm hurt. I'm in like a ton of pain and like I'm cold and like super miserable. I was like, just keep me company if you have some time. So she hiked with me, you know, on the phone for like for a mile. So I don't know, like
You just like put her on speaker and took
yeah,
the
I mean,
phone?
I just tossed her in my pocket and like kept hiking. And I mean, that was huge. So I look at it as like, I might be doing the trail, but like, I mean, she's a huge part of it. Like, she sends me things that if I need it, Johnny on the spot, like, boom, here's some shoes, here's some food.
Without her support, it would be tough.
Totally, it'd be hard. And so I think that she, if I could guess, like, I'm guessing that there's a part of her that's like, I want to see him get to Canada too. Like, I want to see him do as many miles as he can.
And anything that I can do to help you get there.
She wants to marry a winner.
Right?
Mama didn't raise a quitter.
Well, we're going to have to go back and do all those miles.
So do you guys have a date?
We do.
When's the date?
October 7th.
Ooh. So that's going to be right. Because when are you scheduled to be?
I'll be done like early September, I think. So I have roughly like 6 more weeks of hiking if my body holds up and everything goes well.
So I wanted to talk about that, about injuries, starting weight, current weight.
Yeah.
You talk about it in your blogs, but what would you start out at weight-wise?
Like 160, like just hovering around 160.
And where are you?
When I came off the trail and weighed myself right after being on the trail, I was at 147. Wow. I don't really have much to lose.
No.
It's all muscle atrophy at this point. Like, I mean, it's all, your body's eating yourself. So
Totally.
There's no real way to feed it, especially so the miles are increased. I think I noticed a significant weight loss when I started upping the miles. You know, we do no fewer than 20 a day now. 25 is like, it's really weird, but like 25, we're in camp by like 6, and there's 2 more hours of hiking to be done.
Yeah,
right?
there's like more day.
Yeah, so you have more days. So we're doing 20 to 25 miles a day, and I noticed a significant change in my body when we started upping the miles. Just it burns more calories. You know, your body's not recovering as long. It needs more sleep. I'm gonna have to change that up when I go back. You know, sleeping in a little longer. But yeah, I mean the food, and I mean yeah, you got to feed your body, but there's only so much you can do. You know, you can't bring too much food, and at this point, it's like a war of attrition with your own body. Through hiking's really strange. I mean, it's a long-term event, and it's really hard on the body. I think it's harder than, you know, most people probably want it to be, but dealing with foot pain and like pain's just a thing, you know, like it's just a part of the process.
I think any endurance sport is going to kind of classify as that, whether it's cycling or hiking.
Yeah, if you think it's going to be pain-free on a bike ride, you're wrong, you know.
Yeah.
So get used to it.
That's something I actually wanted to bring up is when you have those really bad days.
Oh, man. Yeah.
You know, I've been in bike races where you start to just question, why am I doing this to myself? Because it's completely self-inflicted.
Totally.
I did it in college. I was a decathlete. That second day, it's awful. You get to the second day and, you know, you're 6 hours into your day, and then, you know, maybe you get around to the final event, the 1500, and you're like, maybe I just don't do this race. Like, I don't really want to. So when you hit those points of just absolute, like, why am I doing this? Mental exhaustion, physical exhaustion. But then you talk about it, you go to sleep, and the next day you're like, let's do it again.
Well, what's that breakthrough like? What's that breakthrough, that emotional breakthrough where you get to the point where you're ready to give up, but you break through it, and then, like Ryan said, you wake up the next day and you survived? I mean, that's got to do something to you.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, I think I think athletes, I'm sure there's a lot of you can associate it with a number of different things, but I think clearly if you're an athlete and you've been in that situation, whether you've played football or whatever sport it is, or when you've really grinded it out and you're like, dude, I'm not into it. Like, this sucks. This is terrible. But then, like, you just keep going and you learn that, like, pain tolerance, and you learn that, like, well, let's not quit today. Like, there's always, like, a thing of, like, don't quit on a bad day, you know, like, and so you're in this horrible abusive relationship with this event that you're doing, and you like, I go through, I want to quit every day. I mean, literally every day I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, what am I doing? I should be going home to this amazing life. Or like, I love coffee shops. Like, water runs clean from the faucet, you know? But then you get in these pains. I had 2 really bad days. One where my knee was like all of a sudden out of nowhere just was done. It was done for the day. And it was buckling on me and it was shooting pain all the way down to my foot. And we were going over snow and we still had 2.5 miles to go. And there was no option. We were going. And I was like, Doc was in front of me, the corpsman, and he was like, walking with me the whole time. And just, your body physically wants to cry. Like, there's no other outlet for it. And you have no option. You just keep going, and it's super sick.
Did your military training, the boot camp, the Marine Corps training, did that?
Oh,
absolutely.
I think every experience up until now has prepared me for it. My parents never let me quit anything.
Well, and I don't know about your boot camp, but like the Navy SEALs and stuff, they have that bell that you can ring. Did you guys have something similar?
No, you could find your way out of boot camp, I'm sure, by doing some stuff. But like they always told you like the easiest way out was to just get through it. So I think that might have been a lie, but I'm not.
That's actually kind of a great quote.
No,
that is a
totally,
good
yeah.
quote.
Like you're doing that right now.
Yeah.
Well, and for the people listening, everybody has struggles every day.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about the physicality of it all, I'm relating to it in my head as I'm listening to you as I go through tremendous amounts of stress in our industry. And if you could just make it through that one stress of that day, and then the next is a new day, and that tolerance becomes bigger and bigger. But we always there's always some sort of bell. There's always some sort of out. You can call it any time and have Jessica come pick you up.
Yep.
We have our truck. My truck's outside the parking lot. Anytime I can go in the truck and go home and go to bed and hide from the world. So I hope that people are listening to this. Take that away from listening to you.
Yep.
We talk about your blog and everything and the inspiration that has for people. But sometimes I may be dealing with something that's very insignificant, but I just don't want to do it, or I'm struggling, or there's that one task I need to get through. And by listening to a podcast like this or reading your blogs, you're like, man, I'm a wimp. I can get through this one thing I'm doing or this level of stress if Emory can be fending off rattlesnakes and bears and stuff out in the woods.
But everything in life, I break down my day to literally hours. When I wake up in the morning, I know that I have to do 20, 25 miles a day. That's my plan. I don't have to, but that's what I'm going to do. But I know that 3 miles, if I want to go 3 miles, I'm going to hike an hour. And I'm pretty dead on if the train's okay. Like I know the timing. So to me, I literally have to break it down to every event throughout the day. If I can make it an hour and I treat myself to a couple minute break, kick the feet up a little bit, sit on a log, hike another hour. So I hike in 2 hour stints, and then I take a 20 or 30 minute break, eat some food, drink some water, 2 more hours. I do that 3 times, and then I have lunch. And then I'm like, dude, okay, cool. Like I'm on the downhill, I'm on the other
halfway.
side, And then so you break it down into 2 hours, and I know that like my feet are hurting, but I know like, dude, camp's like 2 miles away, 1 mile away, half a mile away, and you're like, all right, dude, like that's gonna feel amazing to sit down, and then you're done for the day. And so dude, the first morning, we only did 15 miles the first day, and I was like, I had blisters on my feet, and I was like,
I was real worried for you. You're
Dude.
like, I chose the wrong shoes.
Dude, it was bad. And I'm like, I can't, there's no way. There's 2,500 miles, 2,600 miles. I'm 15 miles into this thing. I'm like, this isn't possible. Like, I don't understand how people are doing this.
You were probably like, this was the dumbest idea I've ever had in my life.
I'm going to have egg all over my face. Like, I'm going home.
Well, because you'd been talking about it, like,
It's a dream.
like prepping all your,
Yeah.
like your tent selection,
Yeah.
your shoe selection. You were blogging about all that leading up to it.
Yep.
Did you have naysayers when you went to do this? That were like, what are you doing? You're not going to make it.
Surprisingly or not, everyone was pretty supportive. I try to surround myself with people that are supportive, but I don't recall anyone that was ever really like, dude, there's no freaking way that's going to happen.
You get a lot of people who are like, you're doing what?
Yeah.
You're hiking from where to where?
Yeah.
Like more in disbelief.
Yeah, more
disbelief,
disbelief.
I have
than
experienced that in the
negative
past,
attitudes.
Well, it's that crab mentality. Have you guys ever heard the crab?
Mm-mm.
So you drop a crab pot and you put a little bait in there, and the crabs can come in.
Mm-hmm.
And crabs can get out of the crab pot pretty easily. So what happens is you get a bunch of crabs in the crab pot, and one crab starts climbing up the cage to get out, and the crabs will grab them and pull them back down.
Oh, really?
And then if it does it again, it'll pull them back down again. If it does it again, they'll get to the point where they'll kill that crab that's trying to get out. Right? So you're doing something that is way above and beyond breaking the cycle and getting out and doing the specific Crest trail. There's got to be people, maybe they're not saying it, they're like, oh, he's not going to make it, or almost like they're trying to bring it back down because they don't get to go do that, or they don't have the ambition to go do that.
I think in a career sense, like, you're going to do what? That's a stupid idea. You got responsibilities. And I'm like, yep. That's my burden, you know, like I'll figure it out. Like, I think there's been stuff said in that sense, but I mean, I think for the most part, people would be like, dude, that's awesome.
Well, and the fact that
I
your
wish I could
work
do it.
gave you their blessing. I mean,
Huge,
that's so huge.
Yep. Huge
It's
let off.
that's awesome.
Yep.
What about food? You talk a little bit about it.
Man, okay, when I'm back, like, I want to sit down with like people that are interested in this kind of thing, because the things that I've learned about food, I struggle with food in the backcountry so much because I'm like, dude, food is confusing, man. It's so confusing. And then there's all these debates on like, I like to eat healthy, but then you hear like thru hikers eat like crap, you know? They're like eating junk food the whole time, and you're like, dude, no, bad in,
Calories.
bad out, you know? But dude, I eat a honey bun every morning. Every morning I eat a honey bun. I have a gallon baggie full of them because they're 500 calories.
Yeah.
And
you need calories,
and,
yeah.
And like, I eat it right before I step off, and it gets me 2 hours worth of fuel, you know? It's terrible for me, but I'm a food processor at this point. Like, it's all just I mean, look at me. I'm like, I've lost like a lot of weight, and
You're looking at
I'm eating honey buns.
Yeah.
And everything he's looking at, even now, like I've noticed, he'll look at something and he'll look at the weight of it, and he'll look at how
man.
many calories
Dude,
it has.
it's crazy. I'm like, I look at, you know, Backpacker's Pantry, if you're listening, like, your stuff weighs a lot. Like, I'm looking, I'm like, oh, fettuccine Alfredo, 7.5 ounces. I'm like,
I don't
you're
want
getting
that
eaten
bad.
first. Like, you're the and I'm like, dang, that's my comfort food, man. I'm like, that's my bad day food. Shoot. Well, okay, I'm not gonna eat that. Like, you know, and you really start looking at stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like a pound is like 16 ounces, I think, right? So a couple of those things, 2 meals?
Yeah.
Okay, eat the heaviest thing, you know, and then you start hearing this thing about like calories to the whole food industry, like a food like health industry, like if everyone beats around the bush, I feel like everyone just kind of like, well, you shouldn't be eating this, and they talk about the calories and the protein and the fats and the weight. But you're not putting things on a table and being like, these are the things that you should eat or not eat. And then, like, because everyone has an opinion. I don't know. It's just super strange. I've never seen actual objects on a table. You know, people are like, it's something like this. And I'm like, no, not something like this. This is what it is. Like, let me just dump out my food bag for you, and we'll talk about the Oreos that are really awesome and easy to eat. And not only that, but like your palate changes. So now you got to find something else. Like, you've been eating Pop-Tarts. I eat Pop-Tarts every day. Like, I mean, I'm literally like just eating junk food, but because the health food, for how many calories you get out of it and how much it weighs,
If
and
you're
the
sitting
space
at,
it takes up,
if you're sitting at a desk all day,
wonderful.
yeah.
But you're not. You're packing that food, and you have 6 days worth of food to pack, and you're like, okay, I need as many calories as I can, and it's super messed up. Like, I seriously didn't believe that the junk food diet on a thru hike is a thing.
It's
You have
for
nothing
real.
left. Like, junk food has a ton of calories, and that's all you need because you're gonna burn it off. And so my method to the madness, like, we kind of start out like 500 calories for 2 hours of hiking or 5 miles, and a liter of water. Start there, you know, like, and eat like short burn and like long burn. So like, you know, some sugars to get you going, and then the second hour, let those like grains and stuff kick in. So eat some almonds or like, you know, some granola bars or something like that. And as long as that you get close to 500 calories, you know, and I don't get close to 500 calories.
Because it weighs too much.
Yeah, I mean, and like, Yeah, I usually eat like 250, like 3, every 2 hours. And then I have some really awesome sour gummy worms. I just toss in my mouth, and I just live off those things. I have a whole pouch full of them, just chuck them in my mouth and roll. So a liter of water, 500 calories, gets me 2 hours of hiking, which is 5 miles. Wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah. So you can feel your gas tank.
Oh, man.
Emptying.
Bonk city.
Yeah.
We call it bonking. Engines shut down.
Yeah,
You
lights
got
go
nothing
out.
left. It's if you've ever done like an endurance sport and you felt that bonk hit, there's nothing you can do about it but feed the tank, like put fuel in. And it's amazing. You toss a Pop-Tart in your mouth or like a candy bar, give it like a few minutes, and you're right back in the game. And you're like, whoa, that was weird. So I can feel myself. I know.
It's like my hunting dog. You can see him start to just crash. So you give him some of those peanut butter Ritz crackers. About 5 minutes later, he's back.
Yeah, I mean, beans, that's a cool thing is that you spend so much time with your body and listening to it and feeding it and trying different things out. You can listen to your body. Like, and I'm like, why am I feeling kind of dizzy? Oh,
Low blood sugar.
Low blood sugar, let's go.
So do you think you're going to have reverse PTSD when you get back?
Oh, from the trail?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like PTSD I've had trail dreams since I've been back, for sure. I sincerely miss the trail.
What's a trail dream?
Just like about finding water and like food and hiking the miles. I mean,
Like anxiety a little bit?
Not anxiety, just like your daily life, like you spend time behind a desk and you think about projects you have undone and the struggles you have to, the things you need to do, and those things crop into your mind. Well, food and water specifically, is uncontrollable. I mean, and you're not going to carry 10 liters on you. I mean, those are stressful. Water's stressful. So, I've had trail dreams, but then, like, it's weird, but I miss the trail. Like, I don't know why, by the way, I think I'll be processing this entire experience for a lot of years. And I think doing things like this, talking to people about it, is going to help.
Well, it's going to be different processing it when you're back in your actual routine at your job and everything. Yeah.
And I'm a little worried about it because life is super simple on the trail. And there's like, I went from being a person that was like pretty organized and like routine and like, no, I got to do this, and organized. And on the trail, you're like, you just gotta go with the flow. If you get the ride, you get the ride. If you don't, you just eat where you can and you go by it. You just go with the flow.
Well, and this is probably a question that everyone wants to wait till you're done. But have you noticed a change in his personality and everything? I mean,
people are afraid of that for sure.
Yeah, I haven't noticed a huge change. And it's one of those things where I don't know if, we have fairly consistent contact and we talk about it a lot, that I don't know if I'm, too close at the moment to notice any sort of drastic changes, but I haven't noticed a huge change. Him coming home was pretty sudden. So, he went from being on the trail to, hey, I'm coming home tonight, and it was all of a sudden we're, in this weird, new trying to figure out like, okay, he's sleeping in a bed and he's showering and he's eating and we're having this routine again where he's used to being on the trail. And so that was kind of an interesting shift. So it took us, I think, a few days to kind of get into, a rhythm of
normalcy
again.
Or what we would consider normalcy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of sick, but
I did notice a little bit of a shift this weekend when we went backpacking this weekend, and it was my first time, and it was pretty fun. And he was more at ease.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I noticed that a little bit. You were just in your element, and you could just see it. It was kind of a shift of, okay, now he's kind of back into what has been like for him since April.
It was super fun. People are like, you want to go backpacking when you've been back? I'm like,
everyone's like, I'm sure that's really what he wants to do.
I'm like, yeah.
Well, and to get to share that with you probably is a big part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in the best shape of my life as far as like hiking goes. Of course I want to go and like be out there. I sleep really good in the tent. Yeah, it's very interesting.
For example, so I first came about seeing Emory through a photo that he was tagged in with you and found by land, and saw some of the gear reviews. And then I think shortly after, you wrote about your elk hunting camp, and just hiking around and being tired, and it was physical. And what's your thoughts on doing what you're doing now, and now thinking about elk camp and chasing elk? It probably seems kind of easy as far as the physical side of it, like thinking about that.
Yeah, I'm curious to find out how my body, like when I get back into that kind of a thing, like the things I look at, like I look at mountains differently. They used to be very daunting. They're like, man, that's elevation. And now I look at a hill as like,
no big deal.
Not no big deal, but it's like an acceptance. Like things like sleeping in random places, or like the weird elements of elk hunting or hunting in general, that like being alone, in the dark, out by yourself, or in a weird uncomfortable spot, or with your gear, fumbling with stuff, or like, oh, that's a hill, I don't really want to go up that hill. The things that thru hiking has taught me, it's kind of put my mind at ease on a lot of things. And so, of course, like, even this weekend, this hike, it was like a 4-mile hike. And there were sections of the trail that I remember being like, I do not like that part. I didn't like that part. And I'm going over it and I'm like, that's weird. Like, this is beautiful. This is an amazing part. Like, this is not what I remembered at all. But it's because my brain's been saturated with like the extreme, or like I do multiples of those hills or those types of terrain, or miles of really crappy trail. So in regards to elk hunting, like I'm going to be curious to see what it's not daunting anymore, like going deeper. There's always that part of like hunting where you're like, I found myself being like,
yeah,
I'm not going down there.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays in other parts of your life, right?
Yeah.
It's weird. We had Robert Finke on, who climbed Mount Hood and fell and had a pretty bad accident. And just a very level, like he's a big hiker, big backpacker, and just how level he was. And then we were talking about, here you go. Yeah. You want to go cold? Is that one cold enough?
No, that's good.
And we would go from talking about hiking to talking about getting in a shootout in his convenience store he owned. And his tone of voice didn't change. Like, he was very calm throughout that whole thing. And so it'll be interesting to see how, looking at a hill and before it being a big mountain, and now it's something that you can tackle, and then comparing that to going to work and having a project that would stress you out. And I think I can tackle that now. It'll be interesting to see.
It's really fascinating that, like, when you go hunting, or when we go hunting, you go from your desk to the woods, just like that. Yeah. And there's no transition. And then you're like, okay, I'm in it. I have to do this thing. And then you're only there for a handful of days. And I'm sure there's a point to where you're like, after like a day or so, like you start to normalize and you're like, okay, this is life. Okay, I'm hunting now. I'm camping. I'm doing this thing. And then you're right back into work. By the time that transition happens, you're right back. So I go into the woods probably with a lot of anxiety, or like just energy, right? That gets released at some point, and then it comes right back when I go back into normal life. I've had the opportunity for hundreds of miles to let that energy go and like go into the woods and be like, you ever met like a really successful hunter that's like, you clearly have spent a number of hours in the woods, and they're like, their energy levels are just like really low. Like they're very peaceful individuals. I've noticed that, like all the successful hunters that I can think of, they've always just been really like quiet individuals. And they're like, you're like, how the heck are you so successful? Like your energies are just really low. And I think it comes from like that much time spent in the forest, and you're comfortable there, and I think that filters over into normal life. I hope that like the PCT will put me more at ease in like normal life. Like the wilderness has a way of doing that to us, I think.
Well, for the people that don't have the support systems to take that time off work and do that, you don't have to get that. Yeah. To get that way, you don't. A good friend of mine is a fly tyer, and taught me how to fly ties, and he would always say the world would be a better place if everyone tied flies. Yeah. because it's the same thing. You get to a peaceful spot, you know, and it sounds nerdy, so their time flies, but it does. You tie flies, like I'll tie them during the winter, and I go through periods where it totally decompresses my stress.
He totally geeks out too. He's like sending me pictures. He's like, look at this one.
Looks like the last one.
Yeah. So
that's a good outlet. Like everyone needs that outlet, some sort of outlet.
yeah, my wife gets up at 4:30 every day and works out, and that's her outlet. And she struggled to find something. You know,
Yeah.
I have too many things. Right? I was skiing, hunting, fishing, you know, all sorts of hobbies, and she had nothing. And so she finally found going to the gym every day and doing an insane workout with a trainer, with a group. And Ryan used to work out with her, and so that was her thing. And there's so many people that don't have that outlet. You know, it doesn't have to be outdoors and stuff, but so you go back out next week
Yeah, late next week. Deep breath.
and you're dropping them
I'll
off.
be back in 2 weeks.
I know.
I don't know.
Yeah, we.
Here's the
figured it
thing.
out.
I've learned to not worry about it.
It'll
Like
happen.
I think I would be somewhat considered a worrywart in a sense. I haven't even thought about it. I just know that I need to get down to Fish Lake, Oregon. There's a number of ways I can do that. I can even hitchhike. I mean, not that she would let me, but I learned this. You don't tell your loved one that you're hitchhiking, which I've never done in my previous experience. But like, hey, when you got to get somewhere,
Yeah.
Well,
you got to get somewhere.
Didn't an older couple pick you guys up?
Oh, man, yeah.
Tell that story.
They got you.
Yeah, so the amount of incredible people out there in the world is ridiculous. We're road walking around some snow, and in the middle of nowhere, and we didn't have our thumbs out. We decided to, essentially we were going to hike like 40 miles on the road, like just walk, you know. And this retired couple, pulls over, like, you guys need a ride? And we're like, no. Well, I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe.
They're like, you guys shouldn't be out here. Why don't you just get in? We'll take you wherever you're going. We jump in, and on the way down the hill, they're like, we tell them where we're going, and they're like, you know what? You guys shouldn't walk on that road either. Why don't we just bring you to this next town? And we're like, okay, fine. And then the next town decided, you know, it was the next town after that. And then after a while, they were like, do you guys like grilled cheese?
How do you feel about coffee?
How do you feel about coffee? And
Do
we're
you
like,
coffee?
You're like,
I'm like, listen, lady.
thumbs up to both.
I'm like, we are just, and if you're gonna offer some food, we're gonna eat and drink it, you know. So they took us home. We have no idea who these people are. Not a clue. They take us home. They give 3 grown men of various ages, 40, 50, and like 33, grilled cheese and coffee. And then they say, and like they're like, just no rhyme or reason. And then they give us fruit. They cut up a cantaloupe, you know, they do all this stuff. And then they're like, well, okay, let's go. We'll drop you off at this town. And we get going down the road. And this guy's like, you know what? I'm just going to take you to the other town. And he drives us an hour to this town that we were going to meet up with a supporter of the program. And then, and we're just like, you're just like, what the heck? Like we didn't, and we're like, can we compensate? Like, we'll give you some gas money. He's like, nah, you're good. And he dropped us off, and he's like, you guys good? We're like, yeah. And he left.
So what part of the where on the trail was this?
That was, he dropped us off in a town called Greenville, California. So we were coming out of we were hiking from Sierra City, which is just an hour north of hour and a half north of Tahoe or so. But yeah, I mean, and then, you know, meet a couple of, like a young couple hiking they literally went up to a random trail to find thru hikers to give them beer and food. And they found us, and they hiked 2 miles in. They're like, oh, hey guys, we came for you. They literally said that. We came to find you. And Jose and I are like,
Creepy.
okay.
Are you Jehovah's Witness?
Right? and we're like, okay. And they're like, we have a grocery store on our back and beers to the trailhead. Do you want some? And we're like,
Yes.
yep. And so they're like, why don't we just hike with you back to the trailhead? So they hike with us back to the trailhead. We have a couple beers. They have a cooler full of beer and like guacamole, donuts, and chips, and just random grapes and fruit.
And they roofied you. No, I'm
Yeah,
just
right.
kidding.
And they're like, and then we were considering jumping off the trail because of some snow issues and going to this other town. They're like, we could take you. And we're like, okay. And so we drove a half an hour down the hill, and then they're like, we don't know how to get there, but we have, phones. And we get down to the bottom of the hill, and this is around like the Shasta area. And they're like, oh, it's an hour away. Cool, sounds good. And we're like, we're really sorry. Like, you can just drop us off anywhere. And they're like, no, thanks for letting us help you guys out. We don't have anything to do. No, they would not take any money. They were like, thanks.
On Netflix, there's another series I watched called The Kindness Diaries.
Really?
Kindness, this guy, he's wealthy in California, and he goes over to Europe, I want to say. Well, he travels all over the world, actually, and he takes literally zero. He has zero money, no credit cards. Mm-hmm. He has basically the clothes on his back and his motorcycle, and he has to completely rely on the kindness of strangers. So he will, like, get into a city and have to just walk up to people and be like, can I stay at your house tonight? And then through the documentary, you're like, it's incredible. Mm-hmm. He sleeps on his bike multiple times in random parks and not safe places, but some really awesome people take him in. And the people that take him in, the kindness that they show is
amazing.
It's incredible.
Bar none. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. Because you go through day to day and you're like, those people don't exist. Every morning when you drive in traffic and people are cutting you off. Well, love to have you back on when you're done in October, and see how you're doing. And then a month later, you're getting married. Mm-hmm. Are you going to have any of your trail mates in your wedding?
No, we're having a really small one. In fact, we were talking about experiences earlier and sharing that with people. And in the last couple of weeks, it really hit me that I'm like, this should be shared with someone that you're close to. And so I would give anything to have Jessica with me, but because the guys that I'm hiking with they're going to go home. And I'm left to tell her about the sunsets and the sunrises and the morning forest walks and the random kindness of strangers and the pain and the difficulty. So, yeah, I mean, you have this dream of like having those people around you, but we're gonna have a small wedding, just family, close family, like old school, like 1800s. Yep. Like just in a house and the important stuff.
Do you have any ambition to do any of the other triple crowns that they're called?
The other two trails.
The other two trails, or any trail?
Continental.
Not if it doesn't include someone that I'm friends with or close to. Like, it's just too good to experience alone.
Is this something you're interested in doing?
Maybe not the longer ones. We've kind of talked about doing, like the John Muir Trail or what's the one up north that we kind of talked about the other day.
Northwest.
Yeah. Our industry isn't easy to take time away from, especially my role, so it's how do you explain to your loan officers, like, hey,
I'm going to go hiking for a few months.
I'm going to go hike for a few months.
Well, definitely have you back on. Yeah. So if people want to follow you, your website is...
let me just go to Screen Capture here, and I'm going to get to... here it is, byland.co.
Yeah.
He has all kinds of gear reviews. Up here you got articles, and then if you just scroll down each entry, lots of good photos. You can read about his journeys.
And then Warrior Expeditions.
warriorexpeditions.org is the...
I have the wrong one.
No, it's so Warrior Hike became Warrior Expeditions because they started doing more than just hiking. So they do a paddle down the Mississippi and a bike ride across the states. So,
and I'm sure there's a way for people to donate on here. I see it right there.
I'm sure,
donate.
Yeah. Yep.
And then I did find out earlier, we were asking about when the trail came about. So it looks like it was conceived in 1932, got designated as a National Scenic Trail in 1968, and then it was completed in 1993.
Wow.
So it's been around.
And I hope it stays around for a lot of years. Like, yeah, it's just too good to pass up. Europeans come over here because they don't have anything like that. The Europeans on the trail are insane. They come over and they don't have anything like that. So,
Well, it's becoming more and more popular thanks to what you're doing, social media and,
Yeah.
and movies and Netflix. Your Instagram,
yeah, buy land with 2 underscores in between buy land.
Dude, Joe Rogan follows you
I know. Isn't
on
that funny?
Instagram.
Isn't that hilarious?
And then Cameron Haynes, who's a humongous. Cameron Haynes is, I don't know that he follows you, but he's liked some of your photos.
Really?
For real.
he's been Instagram stalking you.
Dude, right on, Cam.
Well, dude, I know. We want to get Cam on the podcast.
So, yeah, I wrote a post about Joe Rogan and Donnie Vincent, like kind of changing my opinion on hunting because I
Because
almost quit
Donnie's a
hunting.
total badass, too.
Yeah, and I almost quit hunting. I was like, I'm done. Like, I feel terrible about I'm a horrible human being. And then I listened to Joe Rogan talk about it, and then I listened to Donnie Vincent. And that's a whole topic that we probably talk about, but I was like, interesting.
Maybe not.
Joe Rogan's been great. He's been a great ambassador for hunting because he's taken his audience, which a lot of non-hunters, and here's somebody who didn't hunt for most of his life and is going through it now, and he does a very good job of talking about it and has he's surrounded by the right type of hunters.
Totally, yeah.
Like Cameron
Yep.
Haynes and Stephen Ranella.
Good representatives of the industry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very good.
They're doing it the right way.
Yeah. And his success rate is realistic.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yep. Cool.
um,
Thanks, guys.
No, I'm glad you guys came on, both of you.
Heck yeah.
Happy birthday, Jessica.
Happy
Thank
birthday.
you.
So please subscribe. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers. You know, we need to do that at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah, when people are actually listening. We should just start out with, first of all, please subscribe to our podcast.
Yes, we're getting almost to the halfway point with the subscribers because then we get our own URL. So please subscribe, comment, and follow Emory and what he's doing. And
Appreciate it.
it's been a lot of fun.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, man.
All right, see you, everybody.
We're out.
Good job.